David, created by Michelangelo, a sculpture in marble which dates from 1501 to 1504. The sculpture was made by the young Michelangelo, still in his 20s, a prodigy. He'd been entrusted with a great block of marble excavated from Carrara, which is not so far from Florence, and which had been in the workshops of the Cathedral of Florence for many generations, but no artist had managed to fashion it into a sculpture. There was a flaw in the marble that made it very difficult to work. But Michelangelo was so brilliant at carving and so brilliant in his understanding of the qualities of stone that he was able to conjure up this great figure and to bring the biblical David before our eyes. Giorgio Vasari, the art historian who idolised Michelangelo and knew him well, asked him once how on earth he could carve figures with such anatomical realism from inert marble. And Michelangelo said, "I don't feel as though I have to carve them. For me, the shape is already in my mind, and I just pull it out of the stone as if I were pulling a drowning man out of water." What a wonderful description for the mysterious magic of his genius as a sculptor. I'd have to say this is probably the single most impressive, most remarkable sculpture created in the Western world after the fall of Greece, after the fall of Rome. There's nothing that quite rivals it. It is, if you like, the greatest sculpture in the world from the modern period. Now, what did it mean to Florence, and why did Michelangelo carve it? Well, let's go back to basics. What's the story? The story is the defeat of the terrible giant, the great warrior Goliath, by David. And we find that story in the Old Testament. The armies of the Israelites are facing the armies of the Philistines. The armies of God are facing the armies of the devil. And day after day, this great giant Goliath wreaks havoc among the Israelites. And day after day, he challenges them. He says, "One of you meet me in single combat. Meet me in single combat." But they're all too scared. And then eventually, young David, a boy barely into adolescence, takes on the challenge. He's offered sword, shield, armour. He says, no. He says, no, I won't have any of those things. I will just take my sling and 5 stones, and I will go to meet Goliath. Like that. And I think perhaps to emphasise the bravery of that decision, Michelangelo has depicted him completely naked as God brought him into the world, armed only with that sling and the stone he holds in that beautifully carved right hand. The story, you probably know, ends with David smiting Goliath in the forehead with one of his stones, killing the great giant, cutting his head off, and leading the Israelites to victory. But that isn't the moment that Michelangelo has depicted. He has depicted the moment before the battle, the moment when the young David is full of resolve, full of foreboding, confident yet nervous, tense yet relaxed. It's a brilliant study of the perfect human athlete at the moment when the game is about to begin, at the moment when the race is about to be run, at the moment when the fight is about to be fought. When Michelangelo finished the sculpture, no one thought he could do it. When he finished it, my goodness, all of Florence went to see it. They couldn't believe what was before their eyes. This was instantly acclaimed as a masterpiece. How could he have done it? How could anyone have created a sculpture like this? And then the conversation turned to, well, where shall we put it? Where shall we put it? It was perhaps originally intended for the cathedral. But in the end, the authorities decided, and I think they were right, that it should stand at the main entrance to Florence Town Hall, the Palazzo Vecchio, guarding, so to speak, forever, defending, so to speak, against the enemies of Florence, the enemies of God, defending the city against anything that should befall it. Because of road pollution and the risk of vandalism, the sculpture no longer stands there. They've placed a replica where it once stood, and it's now indoors in the Accademia. But its meaning, I think, is still clear.